What makes a great doctor? Board certifications or maybe specialties? Or curiosity and commitment to personalized care? Our guest today is one of the few doctors dedicated to expanding her toolkit and offering all available treatment options to her patients. This is the story of bioenergetic medicine with Dr. Ashley Salomon. Dr. Salomon, so good to see you again. You're one of my favorite doctors and people out there, and I just saw you
Oh,
last week. So thank you for
thanks,
coming
God.
back, and it's great to see your face so quickly. Uh, when I saw you in LA the other week, you were just coming back from a Dr. Joe Dispenza event, and you were I think still high off of it and not getting sleep. You said, how are you feeling now a week or two outside of that event?
That's a great question. I'm actually feeling even better. I think because to be honest, didn't have that much time to sleep there. We were doing so much meditation. My favorite was this 4 a.m. pineal gland meditation. I had just
Ooh.
the most incredible experience, one of the best I've had in meditation. And I've been meditating almost 20 years now. But I will say I kind of had that. I was running on empty when you saw me. And then I kind of crashed a little bit, had to keep up with my clinic and patients and work. And now I'm just in this great steady state where I'm motivated to make sure I'm not just doing like a short meditation, but a really solid, at least an hour meditation a day. Sometimes I fit it in when my kids are asleep. But it's really been good for me. I think I tend to have a nervous system as a sensitive person that can get a little off kilter fast,
Yep.
and I can get into a state of having to do things and thinking too much and not being in my body. So I will say just the hour plus of meditation a day we're doing right now has just been incredible. I feel just very embodied. I feel like I can regulate my nervous system faster.
Yeah, me and you are the same in that sensitive type and always in our heads and racing. And that's why things like meditation and doing it right and going to these events like Dr. Dispenza's, so many others out there are so essential. And I know we have been in that spot. We've recorded. We still got to finalize it, by the way, our sensitive podcast series.
Let's do it. Let's do it, Casper.
So much about being sensitive isn't just ruminating your head and overthinking things or even being, I would say, introverted. It's picking up on the very subtle energy of things.
Absolutely.
Right. And that brings us to, the story. This is all about bioenergetics. And I believe energy medicine is the future. You believe that, I know as well. But I want to kind of like set the framework because so many people like, what is energy medicine and what is bioenergetic medicine? What is it to you?
Great question. I'm going to keep this concise because obviously it's a topic that we could talk about for hours and hours.
Yes.
Let's start with bioenergetic medicine. I think the idea is that we have a biofield. We know this. We've measured it. We've measured energy centers in the body, which have been also called chakras, and we've measured meridians in the body. So we know that our body responds to certain frequency. Certain frequencies resonate with certain tissues in the body, certain organs in the body, even certain bugs in the body, which is one thing that's wonderful about a lot of the new machines, many of which are from Germany, out that can actually say, hey, there's a frequency of a parasite in your body, or there's a frequency that's not quite in match with who you should be, or your tissue is not quite resonating at an optimal frequency compared to healthy tissue. So we do know from science as well now that our body resonates with frequency. But I think on top of that, we're figuring out how we can tune into the bioenergetic field, and that's with energy medicine. And it's interesting. I feel like the term energy medicine just keeps broadening with time. Like I feel like the meditations I'm doing every day, and I've sensed this a long time ago when I first started meditating. I was having all these mystical experiences that I didn't know what was going on. But what I realize now, it's because our bodies, when we are in more resonance, they really tap into the energetic fields all around us that we can't see, right? So our bodies are so interesting in that way. And there's a lot more space in our body that is just space than actual physical form. So I think that's all beautiful because I think more and more is going to get unraveled with the levels of healing we can have from just understanding this. And then I would also say, so I've mentioned machines as part of energy medicine, that there are machines that can tap into frequency and rebalance frequency. And there are many ways that that can happen with PEMF, pulse electromagnetic field, with other magnetic fields, with photon, because our bodies do release biophotons. So there are all those ways that we can use energy medicine. And then we can use our own bodies because we can do meditation. We can tap into our own energy centers. We can tap into our own being and where we are in this giant, magnificent universe that we're in. And meditation is probably one of the best ways to feel into that. And then there's actual energy medicine where people can be kind of pure conduits for directing frequency and signal into other people. So that's where I think most people know Reiki, but there's so many different kinds of energy medicine. There's sacred geometry, there's healing touch, acupuncture. Acupuncture's been around. They document for over 4,000 years, but it's been even longer.
Yeah, it's one of those things when you say energy medicine, people are like, oh, you mean acupuncture? It's like that's a facet, right? That's a little thing.
Right.
That's like saying sports and being like, oh, you mean baseball? It's like, it's one, yes.
It's
There
one
are
of
many
many.
others, many others. And again, everything is energy. So it's all energy and it's all medicine. Like
Right.
lights around you can be sunlight is a form of energy medicine. It's frequency and vibration. So so much of what we see out there is truly energy medicine. And we are at our core energetic and spiritual beings. And I know that's a big thing for you. You like to go beyond the physical body in understanding what's going on with your patients and really address that emotional, the trauma, the purpose things, which are the spiritual. How do you incorporate that to, I don't know about your population of patients, but the population overall don't see that as medicine. So do you get that you get patients that are just totally open to it, or do you have to process, them and educate them as to this type of medicine that you're doing?
Yeah, I think patients who stay with me for years would say this. It's a journey. So we
Yes.
start with the more physical. They come in because, very common, a gut complaint, or they have no energy, or they just don't feel like they used to. When they were younger, they wake up in the morning, like, who am I? What am I? What is this? And I say, well, the good news is that our bodies can, I don't even like to say age, they can transform healthfully. We can get to a state of balance. So I will kind of feel into the physical first, because there often are issues going on. I think we've talked about this. With gut issues, our gut immune systems just aren't what they used to be. We don't live in small villages anymore where their babies eating dirt all the time. We don't have this vast microbiome or internal ecosystem that's as strong necessarily to handle we get bombarded by it every day in the food we eat. From toxins to parasites are really common now. They weren't, I think, and we've had parasites forever, but I think the quantity and how many I'm seeing
Agreed.
now is a lot. And so the point being, there's a lot we can treat, and people can see that they're getting a little bit better. And just doing that kind of self-work of saying, I want to take care of my body. And as you know, with a more holistic, integrative, biological, functional approach, however we want to call it, more alternative medicine, it's a process. You can't just take a pill and fix it. It's a process. Like I tell people, we have to detox the gut too. We have to tune into how the gut is feeling emotionally. A lot of emotions are stored there. We have to, there's so many layers of healing and nutrition and lifestyle to get it better. And then I think sometimes once we're at that point where people are starting to feel better, then they're starting to interestingly say, I'm noticing too, my nervous system is out of balance. I'm having these, the emotions I have. And then often I can weave into, well, some of this, we can take care of on the more material level there's wonderful supplements now. There's wonderful molecules out there like NAD, and there are peptides. There's all kinds of things that we can do to support it. But if we're not dealing with some of the underlying emotional, some of it's trauma, some of it's honestly lineage, ancestral.
Right.
I'm noticing with my children when I do energy medicine on them at night, when their best time is when they're falling asleep, so they're not moving. I've been getting these messages of their core emotions that I can tell some of them are from the family, some are part of who they are. And unfortunately, there's positive ones too, but the ones that we would consider more negative, I don't want to necessarily use that term, but and that's like maybe some of their life work. And how do we how do we work through that? So I'm able to kind of slowly work this all in step by step. I eventually say, hey, why don't we do a little bit biofield balancing, a little energy medicine? And the interesting thing is once I get patients into that, they seem to really want to come back very regularly for that. And then
Mhm.
sometimes start spacing out their alternative medicine visits and lab tests and all that, which is quite lovely. But the core emotions are, I've been really thinking about this a lot lately, how powerful they are. At the last day of the dispenser retreat, I just really settled into a few of mine that I think two of them are definitely in my lineage. And then one of them is definitely like just part of me, but I've had it for a long time. And not that it's bad, but just acknowledging it, I have felt a lot of freedom and moving on. But and ones I see on people often are not being worthy, not being good enough, guilt, feeling alone. And I think when we tap into this sometimes too, we can tap into our addictive tendencies, like the cell phone here.
Mhm.
Like every time we reach for something, is it because I feel this deep level of being alone, or do I feel this deep level of not feeling good enough? So I have to keep doing something. I mean, I think we all feel this in some way. And that again, that's why I love energy medicine, because when your nervous system rebalances, I would say this too, like a lot of energy medicine is rebalancing the autonomic nervous system. And I know the work you and your dad do, so much of it is balancing the autonomic nervous system, which is the unconscious nervous system. Then you kind of almost automatically, your body says to itself, wait a minute, should I pick up my phone right now? Or am
Mhm.
I okay just being with me? How am I really feeling inside?
Yeah, it's really interesting that with all these tools you have, of course, there's still the responsibility on the patient themselves, a person to take the actions, even when you're given these wonderful energy medicine tools and all sorts of integrative tools, to take the actions to get yourself in the best possible state of health. What I found, because you're right, we have so many things that are addictive around us, especially technology. And when we're in a state where we don't have the vitality, the awareness, and the kind of, I would say, vibrance within our energy to resist, that's when we fall. It's like when I'm really tired, right? I eat worse for number one.
Right.
I crave like, worse food when I usually eat quite clean. And I find myself just checking the phone more. It's suddenly that addiction like kind of gets me a little bit more. Do you feel that living a healthier life and, you know, meditating, doing all these things, rewiring the brain allows us to gain more freedom from these things that were absolutely created, like the cell phone, to be addictive?
Absolutely, because even though we're talking energy medicine here, we are in material physical bodies, and I
Yep.
think treating them kindly and wisely is super important. For instance, a case in point, I started. There's this adaptogenic blend of herbs I find. My second child is 21 months, and I have a 5.5-year-old, so I'm pretty tired between that and work. Although honestly, I actually don't feel it, and I forget. Of course, some of it is the meditation, exercise, I eat well, but I'll be honest, I have good supplements I take. And there'll be a day or two, I'll be like, why am I crashing in the afternoon? And then I'm like, and once I feel that crash, I want to go into the spiral. For me, it's not so much grabbing the phone or eating, but it's more my emotional addictions, going
Mm.
into like a all poor me or whatever
Mhm.
state. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't take my supplement. So I will say we do live in this fast paced world, and I have all these tools that help. But I do think taking that there are things I take that really support my body. And maybe I wouldn't need them if I weren't living in the world I'm living in, but they really
Mm.
support my body. I feel like they're protecting me from toxins. They're giving me stress support. They're supporting my adrenals. So I do think that there's definitely a place for taking physical
So let's get into that a little bit,
medicines.
because the idea, supplements, I think when they came about many, many years ago, were to supplement something that you were missing something, you could
Yeah.
supplement it, and it would be more of a short-term thing until you regain your health and are able to either eat well or take yourself out of an environment that was draining you of something. But supplements have become this thing that a lot of people feel we absolutely need every single day for the rest of our lives. I'm kinda torn on it. My father's
Yeah.
always kinda been the kind of person, it's more about what you take out of the body, not put into
Yes.
the body, that helps
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
And I know some people, the Dave Aspreys of the world take hundreds a day, hundreds.
Right. People can
And it's
pound a
like
lot of
sometimes it's like
pills.
too much, and then it's and I argue with people like, "Aren't you healthy? Don't you take like 50 supplements a day?" It's like I don't. I try to get to the core ones. I understand my body intuitively and do testing and everything else to see what's going on. And I don't usually take something forever. There are a few I do daily, sure, but how do you feel about that? How do you feel? Let's say this, because in a disease state, I believe you need supplementation. You've already gotten
Yeah.
yourself out. You're so depleted. Your body can't even make
Yeah.
some things. You need it. But if you're relatively healthy, do you think everyone should be taking supplements?
That's a great question. I would say the answer is relative. I think it
Good.
it depends on
I
the
was trying to
person.
trick you. That is the correct answer. Okay, let's move on to.
No. No, it's a great question. I've been grappling with this myself. I'll say so personally, I take less than I used to. And then sometimes though what I'll do is I'll stop my kind of regular daily support if I want to do a cleanse of the gut. I definitely picked up stuff doing medical volunteering in Guatemala. And sometimes
Mm,
when I test myself, the signal comes back and it could be a
mhm.
system. So like, oh, I better clear out my gut. So I do a protocol, do some colonics, do some ozone IVs, whatever it is to kind of clear my system.
Yep.
But but then I go back to what I was taking before for support after that. But I try not to. I'm definitely taking less than I used to,
Yep.
and I do think some of that is the amount of meditation I'm doing and just more body awareness and frankly testing. You and I both do bioresonance testing, and there's all these ways to test the body. And then you're like, oh, that's the priority problem, so you can kind of focus in. Um, but to be more direct about it, I do think we live in a world where we are bombarded by more stuff. So I think if you are going to take supplements, I think the ones that I find most people need some, and it varies what each person needs, but some kind of detoxification support,
Yes.
a little bit of gut support. And then our soil is just depleted of
Mm.
stuff. So so there are certain nutrients we're not getting. And we can't eat as much seafood as we used to because the fish is so contaminated. So sometimes people need various omega supports. It depends a little bit, but I think they can be very supportive right now if they're targeted correctly, and people can definitely feel better on them. But they can also become a crutch. You can say, I'm taking my supplements, I'm doing all these perfect things, but I'm not doing my emotional work. I'm not doing some deeper work. How am I living my life day to day? I mean, I know so many people who are really, really considered successful on paper, but they don't feel good inside
Yes.
because they're potentially focusing on just the material. And that would even to be also the supplements. Although again, I'm a lot of supplements, but I think there's definitely a place. Like, gosh, the last couple of years, not sleeping at night when my baby was up, and or if my daughter brought a cold home and she's sick and he's sick, up all night. Oh, and again, of course, I'm giving them plenty of good supplements while they're sick, which actually has really helped them, I think, stay off antibiotics, which has been great. But, then getting up in the morning, have to go to work all day. That's not normal necessarily to go 24 hours without sleep. And so, I mean, those are cases where I may not be in a disease state, but I feel like some of that stuff has kept my organs from crashing later. So I would say, I don't want to force them on everyone, but I think there's so many great products out there now. And I don't think we're getting all the nutrients we need in soil nor the antioxidants. So I think it can be incredibly supportive.
Yeah, I think this is sort of, where the whole debate goes even into food. Like we all need some food and everything. The quantity is somewhat, and what it is important in some ways, but what's most important is quality. I think we
Absolutely.
could all use some vitamin D when we're in the winter and not getting, any sun and living indoors more and more. That's not the
Yes.
question anymore. It's what is the quality of the vitamin D you're taking? Are you going to the
Right.
corner store and buying the cheapest stuff you can find? Or are you actually paying a
Eh,
little bit for a producer that's actually making a quality one, right? That's the big thing.
Absolutely. And vitamin D is huge because I can't tell you how many people come in on some random vitamin D and like it's not working. Your body's not absorbing it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I actually find often it's the liquid and liposomal forms of D that absorb better. Like I have patients who can't absorb D from their genetics too, and then you have to add broccoli sprouts, so then their level just goes right up.
Yep.
Or if they're taking a brand I said, well, I don't know what you're taking, but it's not your level on your blood work is nothing, so it's not absorbing. And then I put them
Yeah.
on a better one, and lo and behold, a month later, their levels are going up. So absolutely, like the quality, how it absorbs, how the body takes it in.
Yeah.
Huge.
And like even going back to the diet, I read today that the average American, 60% of calories come from ultra processed foods. And,
Yeah.
we already knew ultra processed results in diabetes, cancer, all these things, obesity. But now they're finding over 10 years of research of studying this, it's really impacting our brains. And I think this information is pretty well known. I'm sure people like you and other great doctors are saying, please don't eat that ultra processed crap,
Mm.
right? It's not
Right.
doing you any favors, but nothing's changed. It's like we have 10 years of
Yeah.
data showing it's shown to increase anxiety, depression, cognitive dysfunction, decline, and on top of that, of course, obesity, as I said, metabolic dysfunction, everything else. Do you think we are at this place where we need to kind of rewire our brains? I know that's big with like Dispenza, and a lot of what you do is rewiring the brain, especially when we have so much information coming in that is contradictory. You could have ultra processed foods that say organic, that say all these healthy things on them. We
Right.
eat them and we go there. Do you think it's like a something we have to do to rewire society's brain to kind of move past it? Because it seems like we're gaining all this information that this is so harmful for us. And yet we're still doing the same thing for convenience, for, I don't know, just the comfort level or belief system. Like, is it time we need to get people to figure out how to rewire the brain so it doesn't go to that anymore? Because the data is showing us nothing's changing. It's
Yeah.
getting worse.
That's a really, really great question. I think a complex one, because what we're talking about too is we're going into the human psyche here,
Mm,
right? In the state of consciousness, because we can have all this information out about certain things that are toxic, like Roundup, right? Glyphosate. How much
yeah,
more do we need to know how bad it is, right?
right. Yeah.
And so, um, and yet somehow I feel like if all this information can be out there and kind of hover almost in the air,
Hmm.
but if it doesn't go deep, even deep into our consciousness, and maybe even deeper into our below the consciousness, into the subconscious, and
Yeah.
into our belief system. But
Right.
there's something that, because I think we're so overwhelmed with how much we have to deal with every day, whatever's convenient, whatever's easier, it's very hard to let go of that. I mean, I
Hmm.
understand that.
Hmm.
Yeah, we're in the world. I have noticed since I grew up as a kid in the 80s, this is so much faster paced. So I, I think your point, and then the question is, how do we rewire our brains? And the lovely thing is, there's so many ways.
Hmm.
Um, I'm, I found that my daughter's not getting into deep delta wave sleep. I think because of, there's been a lot of viruses since
Hmm.
kids were inside for so long, and during the pandemic, and now or during COVID, and now they're out. And um, anyway, I found out that, and it's probably because of all the infections she's gotten, she's not getting into deep delta wave sleep. So I'm doing a lot of rewiring of her brain with neurofeedback and
Mm.
magnesium, and certain supplements that are testing for her. Um, and of course, food is huge as well. So the good news is there's and of course we already talked about meditation, but there's an energy medicine and all these great machines out there now, and in innovative medicine, I think, what do you have, 95 of these machines, I
Over
think.
100 now. Yeah.
Over
Yeah.
100, amazing. So there's so much we can do to rewire nervous systems and body, but I think your point is we have a lot of tools to support our bodies in the 21st century, with all we're bombarded by toxins, by media, by too much screen time, by 5G, uh, by the bugs that are getting into our bodies more easily in food, and and the Lyme disease rates are growing because we have some more ticks now. All these things, but the point is this: I think what you're saying is you can have all this clear information of what's supportive for a human being, and we could all know it, but if it doesn't get deeper into our nervous system, that something that really has to change on a whole cultural level, on a humanity level, it may not change, or it may lag for a long time.
Yeah, it's a complex issue with so many pieces to it, as you said, and a lot of this is what you're wired with at birth, right? Or
Yes.
through the early ages, I should say.
Yeah.
Most people say by age 7 or so, your beliefs are kind of in there in the subconscious, and then they're reinforced over time or not. And you could break free, but it's very difficult because may not even remember something is there. And this idea maybe of eating a certain way when you're young and just saying, okay, it was good then, my belief system is good now, no matter what the data shows me,
Right.
that it's even
People
killing me and I feel bad, that won't change my belief because it's, in a deep subconscious state.
That's interesting. And people, it's really hold on to food specifically.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to shift. And it's not that and people should be orthorexic, it's
Yeah.
which is just obsessing all the time and on these perfect diets or needing to cleanse all the time. Or you can go crazy with being perfect about food too. So it's not about
Absolutely.
perfection, but it's an awareness of what our bodies really need and even awareness of what's not right with food anymore and that we're not getting certain minerals and how we can either improve food over time in agriculture to make that better and also what we can supplement with. But
Yeah. One of the complexities you brought up, you mentioned a few times already, are these 21st century bugs, the pathogens all around us. You mentioned parasites. You mentioned something like Lyme Borrelia. Um, I've seen it many times where a patient comes in thinking they don't have any infections and they have multiple co-infections. Do you see it on the norm with your patients that they are suffering from some sort of co-infections and pathogenic infection?
it's very common.
Yeah.
I, patients have to, I feel like have to be ready to understand some of this too. So sometimes I'll start with just some basic immune markers and say, oh, that's low on you. Let's think about what that could be. And in a gut panel to be like, oh,
Mm,
look, there's fungus. I can't really tell you how many people catch growing fungus in their gut
mm,
and overgrowth of yeast. I found one great, I can do energy testing on this too, but if I can catch it on a physical document, sometimes people really,
yep.
they can really tune into that. There's this guy he's a doctor. He just looks at parasites all day under the microscope in stool. It's his job. So he'll catch things. So we look at what is on your actual test that they saw in your poop. So,
Yep.
and then that can really click. And then I'll say, let's just start small by targeting these more major issues. And then things like Lyme and co-infections that I can move people into if they're ready. But it's amazing how many people have some immune suppression now in some form or other. It'll start just like, oh, your white count's low, or oh, this one marker's low, and why are you so inflamed here? And then we go from there.
Do
But
you
yeah,
think
so
that
common, so common.
Do you think that's the biggest factor here is that most of us have poor immune function and response? And that's what allowing, because a lot of these pathogens, let's be honest, have been around for a very long time, right? Whether it's viruses,
Yeah,
EBV, all these different viruses, they mutate, but our immune systems have been very good at
yeah,
keeping up to the most part with it. Whereas now it's just prevalent, right? How many people have infections that we can't keep in check and are becoming real chronic conditions. Whereas in the past, yes, you have these around, you can maybe even get an infection of something, but you're able to handle it. Your immune system does what it has to, and you stay healthy. So do you think we are in a state, an epidemic really, not of infectious diseases, but of lowered immunity?
absolutely. To start, more than half of our immune system is in our gut.
Gut.
The
Yeah.
microbiome has um, more than a trillion cells. It has more, there's more cells that aren't us in our body. There are bacteria that are us,
Yeah.
which actually is another interesting thing to process is that there's a lot of things living inside us. So
So many. I think
it's
we forget
fascinating.
that, right?
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing when you're told you have an infection, you like freak out a little bit, right? You're like
Right.
something's in me, like trying to kill. It's like
Right.
there's tons of things in you that
There's
are
a
either trying to help you or kill you at all times.
yeah. Yeah.
Trillions of them basically in you. There are more of you, like you said, of them than you actually. And
Uh,
we need to, I think, understand that there is a whole civilization within us.
it's
And
a
we
whole
need to
civilization. Yeah.
cultivate that civilization and not let them turn into like anarchists and, criminal kinds, because
Exactly.
then you get this really bad situation and your body reacts with inflammation, with chronic disease and everything else.
Yeah. And
So,
our, mhm.
yeah. No, I was going to say, knowing that and knowing that so many people turn to antibiotics, like how do you get people to stop doing that and cultivate their civilization to be more behaved?
The lovely question. Well, first I often, well, if we start with the gut, because that's where I think a lot of our weaker immunity is we don't have the variety of healthy bacteria in our gut microbiomes than we used to, living in urban environments. And then just for so many reasons, and all the herbicides, pesticides, there's many reasons for it. But um, so first I think that's a big part of why our immunity is lower. I do think we have brand new levels of stress that are crazy
Mm,
intense. Just the amount of things we're exposed to, the amount of information and what children see at too young an age now. I mean, these are stresses on our body for a lifetime. So there's a lot
mhm.
going on, obviously, on so many levels. And as we both know, anything that affects the autonomic nervous system can potentially cause disease or affect health.
Yep.
But going back to your question directly, I I like to start with the gut. So generally, because I say, look, you've had a lot of antibiotics. Let's do some restoration. I can't tell you, people
Mhm.
come to me on an antibiotic and they've gotten put on a fluoroquinolone too for something, and they're in the middle of it when they come in to see me. I'm like, okay, well, let's just step one. Let's do gut restoration. Let's just protect your gut from this.
Yep.
There's enzymes. There's depending what that person's body resonates with, but there are enzymes. There are antifungals things we can do to protect for the overgrowth. Fungus loves to grow after antibiotics. For some people more than others, but it just loves to grow when you're killing off the good bacteria. It's like, ooh, I have an opportunity now. Um, leaky gut. There's all kinds of great leaky gut healers out there. Brome broth, colostrum can be. There's some incredible colostrums out there. Goat and even cow colostrum, right? For a lot of people to tolerate. Glutamines. There's lots of things to heal leaky gut. There's for certain people, probiotics are or I did not realize and understand the value of probiotics until
Mm,
I was in my practice. I think, that a lot of people get till they SIBO, they can never take a probiotic again. That's just I have to tell you, my patients who I've been able to work up to take a probiotic are the ones that tend to not have more gut issues again, which I is interesting because that it tells me that potentially we really do need that extra support with those extra healthy bacteria
yep.
that we're not getting anymore. Um, but so I do a lot to kind of counteract the antibiotics if I can. Whatever's growing because of it, whatever's leaking in the gut, whatever's not happy. And then, as far as trying to keep people off antibiotics, my goal is just to target whatever their weakness is in their body and support it. Because it may
Mhm.
just be, even someone who has just real liver issues that could be from so many reasons, or has really weak adrenals, that can set off a whole hormonal axis issue, and then your immune system tanks. So
Yeah.
there's so many different reasons for it, but I think we support the organs that are weak. We heal the gut because most people need that.
Mhm.
We get rid of any of the really bad guys in the gut, and um, then we can look at for other like those more stealth issues like viruses, Lyme, all those other things too.
Yeah.
And then again, the emotional and the traumas. Some people have traumas that just they're so hard to overcome that could be really weighing them down too. So
Yeah, it's a very terrain theory driven approach as opposed to the germ theory where it's just like go after that. How you going to do it? You're going to drop a nuke bomb of an antibiotic and hope it kills, them, but kills all those good guys too. So I think if as European biological medicine talks about, you cleanse the terrain, you create an environment where these pathogens cannot exist or persist very well, but the good ones can. And you keep going from there and you see which organ. I mean, you could point at any organ in the body and I'm sure you could show 50 to 100 things that are in our everyday life impacting it negatively. So it's
right,
just which
yeah,
organ is going to go in which person first is the question. How do you then
right,
restore it and do it? But it's true. It's like we are living in just a toxic sea, and it's an unfortunate thing. And again, we kind of stick to a lot of these physical things like the toxins, which are physical and this, but so much is also, as we started in the energetic side, and I want to bring it back and change it a little bit. I told you we are going to hit a lot of topics today.
great.
But one of
Sounds
the
good.
things I want to go into is something you're certified in, skilled and trained in is heart math and heart
Mhm.
coherence. And I really do think this is an important matter and something so overlooked, of course, by conventional medicine, but by most people in general. Can you go into the importance of this idea of heart coherence?
Absolutely, and thank you for bringing that up. one of my favorite things to talk about now. So, I would say this to start, it's incredible that when you can tune into your own body and your own system and slowly over time reset your own imbalanced nervous system from a stress mode to a more balanced state of being, how much healing you can get just from that. And I was starting to understand that just with the work, the biofeedback machines I use, the energy machines, the bioresonance testing, all of these, the meditations I do, all of this. But then I did get my Heart Math practitioner certification, and it brought a whole new level of healing for me in the last couple of years. I've been doing Heart Math in some version every day, along with some other techniques. And what the studies have shown is basically that when you focus on your heart and breathe and meditate through your heart and bring up, and you don't have to force it, because obviously anytime you try to force the wrong emotion or suppress an emotion, you go right into your head with negative thoughts.
Mhm.
So it's real, but bringing in, something that you really love. Like, obviously it's easy for me. I have two little kids. So,
Yep.
I have a little scrumptious baby. Oh, it's easy but bringing something in that you love and really feeling the resonance of the heart, because human beings do have this incredible, innate, deep, profound capacity to love,
Mhm.
that we can start shifting our physiology over time. So when you start to meditate and become calmer in the heart, you create something called improved heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is just measured. It's mathematical. It's measured within the wave of our everyday heartbeat. And there's actually supposed to be some variation in rhythm. And what's really interesting is HeartMath's taken that heart rate variability and created something. It's a mathematical number, but it's called heart coherence.
Mhm.
So it's actually um, how resonant your heart really is, so that the wave pattern form of your heart with its rhythm and beating is very smooth and even, just to keep it real simple.
Mhm.
And the more heart coherence, and the more that also correlates to more increased heart rate variability ability has shown to increase resilience, increase longevity, increase feelings of wellness, reduce anxiety, increase levels of DHEA, which is a really important hormone for vitality in both men and women and overall well-being. So there's a lot we can talk about with it. Um, and so I love it because it's such a simple technique, and there's some different versions of it. But once you get into the state where you start to feel your own heart coherence, and it's cool because you can get an app and a tool from HeartMath and just measure it. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, my heart coherence is going up. You start to notice, like, I'm not in that state right now. I can put myself in that state and make better decisions from that state in my life, and just start to feel better. And I like that too, because we all go through our thoughts. And
Yeah.
as I said, we all have these core beliefs, and it's easy to go into negative thinking. Um, if we say, oh, this thought's bad, and we suppress it too much, we're just going to think more. So I think having techniques is a great way to actually start naturally shifting our day-to-day movement, or to be able to shift out of a really negative state if we're stuck in it. And what I absolutely loved at Joe Dispenza's retreat is he's taken heart math and heart coherence to another level. I mean, we do know that the heart also entrains with the brain, and then this is talked about in heart math. And so you create more coherence in the brain. He's so focused on brain coherence with the heart coherence, so creating them at the same time. He has incredible guided meditations for that. And it seems that in that state of, like, when you really have this oneness of coherence between the heart and the brain, it's a state that you can potentially help heal others and heal yourself in.
Mhm.
So that's like a focus state for a lot of his, coherence healing,
Right.
and it's really interesting.
I mean, it's true, and we know this very well. So much of what we do is staying in our own heads, right? And
Oh,
ruminating
yes.
and letting the
Resonating.
monkey
Yes.
mind go crazy. I swear my monkey mind is just the loudest, and we need to silence, but how do you do that? You gotta tap into the heart, which has a stronger electrical voltage, they know, and really guides so much of our intuition of, following your heart is
Yeah.
not just a saying in a
Yeah.
sense. there is something more to it. There is science, there is medicine to that. So I love that idea of staying in coherence and using technology to do it. It's not just woo woo. And that's so much of what the
Yeah.
unfortunate word of alternative medicine has gotten into, this idea
Right.
of kind of woo woo.
Yeah.
But it also spans so much of what we knew throughout history, ancient civilizations knew. Part of that, and something I was super intrigued in, always have been, and something you're applying in your practice, is this idea of sacred geometry. And I
Mhm.
really love it because if you look at math and geometry, it guides everything. It is the universal language, as they say. If you were to try and communicate with an alien form, you'd have to do it through this mathematical, geometrical kind of thing, and shapes and all this. And sacred geometry is just phenomenal. You find it with ancient Egyptian, Incan, like all
Mm.
over. Can you talk about how you're applying it within a medical space and a clinical space to help patients?
Yeah, I'm kind of sneaking it in right now.
You're not telling them, it's just there, right?
Depends on the
Because again, that's
patient.
true energy, right? That's what it
Right.
is. It's
Right.
but yeah,
Well, yeah, I want
how
to,
you sneaking it?
it's
Let's tell them.
well, I definitely have some symbols up on my walls, and it's
Yeah.
so funny. People come in and they're like, "I just feel so good in this office." I'm like, "Yeah." So there's a lot of energy moving through this office.
Yeah.
Um, just like so, over time, human beings have been getting downloads on patterns. So there's certain Reiki. Reiki is the most, I think most people know Reiki when they think energy medicine. There's
Mhm.
specific symbols you draw and do. Those were a download to somebody. But the idea is because, yeah, language is complex, right? Even, we're in our adult selves. I don't know about you, but it'd be hard for me to learn
Oh, yeah.
another language at this point. Um, whatever information we're getting from out in space, and as we know, it comes through in a waveform, a frequency form. The convergent mathematically, you can convert it into patterns. So I think
Mhm.
that's what people are getting, a lot of pattern information, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So there are, Reiki is one example of symbols coming in. Biogeometries is really big too now. Um, and and then also sacred geometry, which are more objects we would think about, like pyramid shape and other shapes.
Yeah.
And so in various meditations and downloads over time, people have started getting information on what these shapes represent. And I had an interesting experience after a holotropic breathwork
Mhm.
session. Have you ever done that? It's really, I've never had a more incredible energy medicine experience in my body after doing 2.5 hours of holotropic breathwork. I just felt
Mm.
my entire biofield reset. And I started getting this information about symbols. And um, one interesting part of that was I realized that they like transcend space and time. They're
Mm.
just, and so that's why I think there's power in these symbols. And it's interesting that more and more people are becoming aware of them. Or like, oh, that's the flower of life. Oh,
Yep.
that's the galactic healing symbol. And I still think there's a lot more we're learning about them, and a lot more to go from there. But the idea is that with these symbols, you can um, help promote the healing process, just as in the heart brain coherence can help promote healing to um, either when someone creates that state in themselves, or someone else is doing some kind of coherence energy healing via dispenser or heart math or some other technique on them. um, Bringing in certain patterns, even visualizing, because thought is also energy, right?
Mhm.
So, bringing in certain patterns for healing in specific areas. I mean, that's how I was trained.
Yeah.
Energy medicine still sounds kind of woo woo at this point, and there's still a lot more to be divulged. But I do think it makes sense that, yes, these geometric, and some of them not, are more almost biological looking, like the biogeometries, but these patterns do seem to have some real significance in healing.
Well, that was what I was gonna say, like, look to nature. Look at all
Yeah.
these golden circles and ratios, and then even if I know this, I started in
Yeah.
finance, really, like Fibonacci, that beautiful
Yes.
equation that we use in stock patterns, right? Fibonacci retracements and finding patterns within even stock movement.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to find these things, and we just call them words, but we don't realize these are kind of sacred geometries in their own right.
Yeah.
These are equations that speak languages, beyond all the ones we have put together. as a human race, and it transcends into this natural look at a sunflower seed, or the
Yes.
flower of the sunflower and that beautiful
Yes.
fractals. And, one of the things I want to bring up with you, because I believe here I'm seeing you're one of the first practitioners training in California for psilocybin for medical use.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
idea of fractals, patterns, taking yourself out into something new and opening consciousness and hopefully finding therapeutic use in it all. A controversial thing for sure, the
Hmm.
use of these things, but I want to tap into your knowledge of how you see it being played out, because right now tons, even big pharma is looking at this ketamine, right? And all different
Yes.
types of psychotropic
Mhm.
drugs that can help with PTSD, all these other things. But as someone who understands not just the chemical compositions of things and how they interact with the body, but the deeper energetic and spiritual interactions. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts of how you would use something like psilocybin within a
Mhm.
integrative approach to help someone.
Oh, I love this question. I and I'll tell you why I I really think psychedelic medicine has its place.
Mhm,
But like everything, I think it can go a dark path, the wrong path if we don't use it right. And again, with consciousness, with high
mm,
consciousness. So I love talking about it because I do think in with the right values and ethics and highly conscious use of it, it can be incredibly healing for people. It's just and not for everybody, right? So but I love talking about it because it's not just a black and white
yeah.
discussion to start. So, I did do this training. It was combined with TheraSil, which is it's this Canadian nonprofit. And they get exemptions for people with like serious chronic illness, stage 4 cancer, serious, just untreatable depression to do psilocybin.
Mm,
And they're training practitioners. They're doing it in just a very highly ethical, really valuable way. So they came down here to California for the first time this past November with someone from MAPS together to do this training. So I right away, even though it's not legal here, yeah, I right away went to it because um, I'd really like to be part of the process of moving this forward. And I'll tell you, it made me think a lot about the ethics, the value. I think couple things. I think that medicine is so powerful. It's really easy for someone to think, oh, the practitioner's doing all the work. But truly, it's just like with meditation, it's really the
yeah.
inner person. They're doing their own inner healing work. They're their own healing teacher. So, being a real container of support if you're doing kind of guided work with someone in psilocybin. And it's so interesting because I've had so many patients in California that who've done psychedelics. I've gotten so much information on their experience with doing it with a friend or with a shamanic person and what went wrong, what did it, where
Mhm,
boundaries were not healthy. So a couple things with psychedelics. I think one, it has to be in the right container with a really trusted guide that is coming again, maybe just in heart math, heart coherence, most of it, and tuning into the person. It's not about them; it's about the person doing it. And the person doing it is going to be able to work on their own healing.
mhm,
Um, I where I do like psychedelics is I think they can show people a lot. And again, you can do this with meditation. Like as it dispenses retreat. I was next to some people who had epiphanies from, were meditating so many hours a day. Epiphanies they hadn't had in years about things they had to shift in their lives and about long-term emotional stuff. And but you know what? A session with the right amount of psilocybin and the right atmosphere, the
yeah.
right guide, everything, right set and setting, all of that could potentially for someone who just can't get into that state of really tuning into themselves because they're in so much trauma and so much fear, or they're so sick, say they have like a really severe stage 4 cancer, and there's so much pain, can be very, very supportive, showing them the work they need to do and giving them a lot of guidance. I mean, it really opens up the visionary center of the body.
Mm,
Um, I've looked at people after psilocybin on one of my machines, and it
mhm,
really just without them doing a ton of meditation. Not that you shouldn't work on doing daily practices to help yourself, just like completely opened up their upper chakras, their fourth, fifth,
yeah.
sixth, seven. But the question is that what do you do with that after?
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that people have proper integration. And sometimes that's with therapy, but honestly, sometimes the kind of machines you and I work with can help them integrate it in their body. Holotropic breath work can help you integrate
Yeah.
daily meditation, things to really say, okay, this medicine's showing me this, but here's what I need to work on. And sometimes people just need to feel once in their lives that sense of pure unity and oneness and beauty, especially if they're in like been just told they're going to die of cancer in 6 months. And to latch on to that is a remembrance for what they can do with whatever they have left of their lives, or maybe their life, they'll live even longer now because they have a sense of purpose and unity. So there are beautiful things with it. I'm not, the synthetic form. I've talked to people who've done it with psilocybin, at least that they're working on. It's going to be big, of course, a big business.
Mhm.
It comes on fast and then it goes away fast. Whereas, the pure mushroom version tends to have like a longer delay after, where you can potentially do more therapeutic work. So, I like natural. I'll say this: they're probably going to push the more synthetic psilocybin for the medical use. It still has its purposes. I will say though that mushrooms grow everywhere. I mean, psilocybin is in over 160 kinds of mushrooms. They were here before us. They're all over, so I think people will have access. But um, I do think there's use for that. Um, you know, ketamine is synthetic, but
Mhm.
it it you know, in right there are people who just cannot get off their antidepressants and they desperately want to. Their brain is so wired from the medication they're on over decades.
Yeah.
And I have seen ketamine help certain people get off their medications, but you have to be careful. Ketamine can actually be addictive. So
Yep.
there's uses for all. And MDMA, the studies of PTSD are pretty impressive. But I guess my point is there's some credible uses for it, but there's also that concern that this is just a moment in time. If someone takes something, it may show them something or help them connect to a purpose or oneness, or show them that something you need to work on. But what do you do after that? Are you getting the
Yes.
right support and what they call integration after? Are you going to do that work or not? You still have to do your work. You still have to
Absolutely.
do your work. So, all right. I mean, you each have to do our own individual emotional and, mind, body, spiritual work, which is a lifetime of work in this form.
Right. It's not a silver bullet. And, hearing you speak brought up two things for me that I've noticed with a lot of therapeutic options that are out there. Number one, it has to be done in the right environment. If it's
Yeah.
not really, and this even goes to like a lot of medicine in general, isn't done in the right environment. I'm sorry, like a hospital brings up a stressful situation, like flickering fluorescent lights, very clinical and dark, like, not a good energy and everything. And yeah, you can manage disease and maybe not die because of it, but it's not fostering a healing
Mhm.
experience. And you need the right people, of course, in a healing environment in general. But number two, even bigger, and this goes with almost every therapy, is you have to set an intention with it. The
Yes.
intention
Yes.
itself is part of it. It's like when you talk to people like the biocharger guys or a lot of these therapies that work on frequencies, energies, and everything, they're like, you need to ask the patient to set an intention within the field that
Yes.
propagates it.
Absolutely.
If you just go in skeptical, not caring, or your intention is just to get high or, feel really
Right.
good right away,
Or
that
escape. Escape is a
or
great one.
escapism, right? Yeah, or
Right.
escape, like, the symptom itself. That shouldn't be your intention. Your intention is to, raise your conscious, your body
Yeah.
into a very healing state so that it could self-heal itself, not to just escape
Yeah.
a symptom of pain, which is showing you something. It's a
Yeah.
calling sign, right? So that intention is actually really, really important. And I think whether you're doing it with psilocybin or anything, if anyone's listening and just, I think everyone has to approach their healing journey with a serious intention and purpose. And I know you're
Exactly.
big with that also, this like idea of purpose-driven medicine and everything. How are you incorporating that as well? Because that is kind of the spiritual component. Do you have a
Yeah.
purpose to heal? Are you here for a reason? And everyone is, but you have to figure that out. How are you incorporating that within your practice?
It's interesting. It's so generational.
Yeah.
I'd say certain generations, it's a little easier to get that point in, that it's not just like you have this symptom, how do we get rid of it? But it's a whole healing journey,
Yes.
right? Life is a journey. So, with its ups and downs, and here I am. And I thought, of course, when I was a kid, I thought this was like, I'd be at this age and never change. And now I'm just continuing to realize there's just more to unturn. there's more to work on with myself. There's more to reveal. And then, having children just also, but my point is like, it's hard. Some patients are come in and it's lovely when it's like, I have this emotion, I have this physical body. Things are off. I do feel I could use some support with, more holistic medicine to deal with this. And I'm open to that. And I'm open to the journey of that work. But then also I know that there are these things in my life, these triggers, these emotions, or these things that aren't working out, or I don't have real purpose. And what am I figuring out with that? And so it's wonderful when people want to do both. I'm hesitant to tell people, oh, well, you have to also want to do this. So I'm a little more patient centered in that way.
Yeah.
So, I don't have everybody necessarily doing all their emotional work, but it's amazing though when it's nice though when people start talking about and they do open up to me about, their stresses, their emotional journeys, what they're going through. Then it's really, once someone opens up with that, I say, okay, now we can go into that now.
Yeah.
Like, well, what are we doing for that? And what will help you the most? And of course, with resonance testing, you can test what might help them the most, but also people really kind of know what they want to do too. So, it's a great like avenue and a window to go in. Like just by telling a couple patients that I was going to Dispenza, they bought the Progressive Intensive Retreat online.
Oh, nice.
You can buy it and do it. And that's these are older patients of mine, like much older, never meditated a day in life. I'm like, great, at that. So I think, I wish all my patients were, I would, in all honesty, I had them all working on all avenues of that, but I kind of treat the visit with the patient like a journey. We start here and maybe in a year we can move into this or maybe sooner,
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to watch people as they unfold when they go through it. We kind of initiated a while back this idea of, purpose-driven medicine and writing down before you start the treatment. What is your goal, right? Write it down, write
I
it
love
daily.
that.
Like, what do you want to get out of this? And picture it. Like maybe you can't right now go on a hike, but that's what you want to go travel to, the Swiss Alps and do a beautiful hike. That's what you always wished you could do, but your knees ache, you could barely get out of bed, anything you want. And what we saw, some patients just really weren't for it. They're just like, get this out of here. I just want to feel good. Shut up and put the IV in me. Like, I'm not writing this crap down. Like, a lot of the older male, I guess, ones definitely were like, what are you kidding me? Like, I'm paying you to write down this stuff. So it's funny, but it's even funnier that like 4 weeks in or 8 weeks, whatever, into their treatment, they'd be like, hey, can you give me that back? I want to write. It's like they started to open up. As you heal, you change. Like true healing. And this is the big thing about medicine. I think so many get wrong because so much of medicine, their measure of success is alleviation of symptoms. So it's like if you had pain and you take a pill and you don't have pain, it's like, oh, successful. I did a treatment for you and you are better. Like
the
yay.
Western approach, yeah.
Yeah. And we're like, oh, you saved my life. I don't have pain anymore. It's like, yeah, stop taking the pill and do you have pain? It's like, yes, you're just sweeping on the rug and looking for suppression. Real healing changes people, right? I've seen that where people come in one way, are very against the purpose-driven thing. I'm not writing my goals down. It's like, maybe you should journal. Like, are you kidding me? I'm not a young kid journaling in a little book. And then by the end, they're journaling and loving it and telling people they should journal. So I think this idea at first and finding where they are in the journey, maybe in the beginning, they're very hesitant to do something like writing down their purpose, reading something like Dispenza or Hawkins and all this stuff that they may find outside. But as you heal, you open yourself up to new possibilities and different things. And I think that's the beauty of the type of medicine I know you practice, is that it does open you to new possibilities and it shifts you at your core. As you heal your body, you heal your mind, you heal your spirit, and you start to change overall.
Right. It's beautiful. It's all connected.
It is all
beautiful.
connected.
Yeah.
And that's why I know that this is the future of medicine just from seeing it. And you know that as well. And, part of getting people to understand that and shift the paradigm of medicine is getting people to be aware of it. And I know one of the things here that you're working on is a book. I know it's untitled. I'm not going to ask you too much, but do you have the general idea or framework of what you'd like that book to be about?
Well, the book's written.
Oh,
It's
it
more,
is. Okay.
it's, yes, the proposal is going to go out. So the A publishers, right? The proposal is going to go out. So it's on its way.
Okay.
But the idea with my book is about wellness and health in the childbearing years.
Mm,
So there are, a lot of people are having kids later now and they're kind of thinking about it, but they're not sure. And I have so many people, and even just friends or in casual conversation, people say to me, what do I do
mhm.
to get my body into um just a healthier me
Yes.
before trying to conceive? And some of them say, I don't even know if I'm definitely going to have a kid. It's a complex time with having children. I think
Oh,
people are
yeah.
in a thought process of it. They decide not to for many, many conscious reasons. Um, but a lot of people know their health isn't optimal, but they know that there are things they can do. And, a big part of the book is on what we're talking about with the energy medicine, the stress, the
Yeah.
kind of doing some, if it's a great time to start doing some deeper emotional work on oneself and, some ancestral relational work. I mean, my experience having a kid just blew up everything anyway. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do more work and try and grow more for them.
Yes.
But I do think there's some lovely work you can do before. And it's a great time because you do have a little bit more time then. And then of course it covers nutrition and 21st century toxins and healthy detox and supplements that you can take before and then even through it into if if someone were to decide to have a child.
Yeah. I
Um,
as
so
you
it goes
know,
all
like,
the
toxicity is such a big deal, right? When
yeah.
you're trying to have
Mhm.
a child, that idea of, bringing in another biological being, you have
Yeah.
to do it in the right environment that's non-toxic, so I'm sure a portion of it has to, you have to get into that idea of detoxification.
Yeah, mercury, heavy metals. Mercury is an estrogen mimicker. And
Mm,
so many people are high mercury now. So that's one that you really can get down. So there are things like that
mhm,
that are work on. And I try to do it in ways that are not, explain it in ways in the book that are utterly overwhelming to people.
yeah.
And a lot of the books on gut health, as you know, I love talking about gut health. But so there that just clearing up the gut alone can be so helpful. And then the gut brain connection. So that and I again, the stress is such a huge part there's a lot of complex reasons for fertility issues, but stress is huge. So I cover all of that in the book.
No, it's an
So,
incredibly important topic. I truly believe one of the greatest threats we face, aside from just general health, meaning so many people being
mhm,
so chronically ill that we just can't keep going as
mm,
species, is this idea of infertility, of actually becoming
yeah.
such a toxic, species that we are
Mhm,
unable to procreate. We are
yeah.
unable to give birth. And that is true as we become more and more toxic. You will not be able, you see the birth
Yeah.
rates go down, and it's harder. It's what now, I think in the
Yeah.
next 20 years, something like 50% of people will need IVF or seek it, and doesn't even mean that it will work.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
going towards this trend of it's much harder to conceive a baby. And we have whole,
Mhm.
societies that are on the downturn, Japan and others that are losing their population. Um,
Massively. Yeah.
yeah. And, when you were
Yeah.
talking about that, it brought up, like, I'd seen something, like, about it today, and it's from Dr. Patrick Engel, who's a dentist, and he said, "Treating gum disease prior to the second trimester of pregnancy has been shown to reduce the number of preterm low-weight babies by 80%."
Yeah.
Stuff like that, you just don't
Oh,
know, right?
there's dental
No
health
one
in my book.
tells you
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. There's dental health in my book. Like your teeth are
Massively
really important.
important.
Yeah. And if there's any mercury in the mouth, the studies on mercury
Right.
with the feet, get it out of the mouth. There's yes, dental health, huge, right? So even just that is a simple, basic thing people
Yes.
aren't told. So, yeah, exactly.
No, that's
Exactly.
that's amazing, and a great idea for a first book, so I can't wait till that comes out, hopefully sometime soon. Dr.
Hopefully
Ashley,
very
where
soon.
else can people learn about you and your amazing work?
My website's an easy place to go. It's salomoncenterla.com.
Okay,
So yeah,
and that's
Salomon.
Salomon, right?
Correct. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, for
probably the
everyone listening.
easiest. And they have Instagram is Dr. Ashley Solomon and Dr. Ashley Health. And I have Facebook too. Those are probably
Awesome.
the easiest places. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Salomon, thank you so much for being a guest, a friend, of course, and someone that I admire, and one of the great practitioners that even my father said it's amazing to see
Oh,
young practitioners too, up and coming, really embracing bioenergetic medicine and kind of being the next generation. Because the we have some older ones out there like my father's and others, but you got to carry that on. You're doing such a great job. So thank you so much for that.
oh, thank you, Casper. I value our friendship so much. Thank you
And once
for all
that
the years
book
of
gets
support.
published,
Uh,
you're coming back on. We're going to talk
Please.
all about all the details of this because I'm sure people want to know those nitty gritties. And of course, they'll have to read the book, but I'm going to have you back on for that one.
We'll go chapter by chapter. So,
Yes.
thanks, Casper. Thanks for
Thank you.
everything. It's so good
And
to see you.
you too. As you heard here from Dr. Salomon, healing should encompass the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual aspects of ourselves. Unfortunately, not too many physicians are practicing just yet. But with Dr. Solomon's work and so many others that are up and coming, this may be the future of medicine and will be the future of medicine in the near term. So until next time, continue writing your own healing story.